Okay, so before we get started on today, if you don't have a copy of this sheet, go grab it. Yours, I mean. So if you lost yours, can't find it, whatever, there's a copy in Schoology linked in there, the answer key, and then there's class. There's also probably one I linked in Class Kicks. So things to think about. We're going to be talking obviously about irrational numbers, which we've discussed before, is where are those numbers in real life, right? So things like we know that the square root of 25 is really the number 5. The square root of 36 is the number 6. The square root of anything between these, like 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, falls between them, right? So the square root of 29 is between 5 and 6. The square root of 31 is between the numbers 5 and 6, like 5 point something, right? So that's why I did this, so that you can remember where those things fall and where they are when you're making comparisons. So if I asked you, hey, what's bigger, the number 7 or the square root of 38? Well, obviously 7 is the square root of 49. The square root of 38 falls between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49. So 7 or the square root of 49 is bigger. That's why I did this. Start with here. We're going to put these in order. I'm going to work one, and then you're going to work one in Class Kick, and I'm going to be watching that. So as you can see, I've already obviously given the answer down here. I'm going to discuss why those are the answers. So when I think back to that square root of 8, okay, so I'm going to start there since we just talked about that. It is between the square root of 2 and the square root of 3. How do I know that? Well, I know the square root of 2 is the number 2 is the number 2 is the square root of 4. And I know that the number 3 is the square root of 9. So this falls between those, so it's between 2 and 3. So it's 2 point something, right? 2 point something. Let's kind of get us started here. So taking a look at these numbers, how do we decide? So again, smallest to biggest. So first off, we know that, there we go. We know that the most negative numbers, 2 negatives up here, the most negative is negative 3.5. So without even much thought, I can go, oh, well, the negative 3.5 is definitely the smallest. The next number that's negative here, there's a negative 0.4 repeating. And I know that's definitely bigger than negative 3.5. Think about being more negative if you like, right? So negative 0.4 repeating. Oh, something I should state. When you put numbers in order for me or put numbers on the number line, I like them in their original form, the way I give them to you. Even if you convert, let's say you convert 0.25, right, into 1/4. But I still need you to know that you have to give it back to me as 0.25. All right, so taking a look here. What do I have left? I have 0.25 or 1/4, 0.3 repeating, right, or 1/3, and then 2 point something. Well, I can tell you right now, 2 point something is definitely bigger than these two. So if I leave a little bit of room, we can put, well, square root of 8, right? Again, I want the original format back from you. So let's see here. We've got, so I can cross that one off, right? Most definitely, there we go. So I have to decide what's bigger here. Well, if I'm going to compare those two, we're going to compare them as the decimal or fraction's up to you. I really don't care. If you compare them as a decimal, you have 0.3 repeating, right, or 0.33 in this case, and 0.25. Well, obviously 0.33 is bigger. Or you could compare them using means extremes theorem, right? 1/3 and 1/4, because 0.25 is 1/4. I do expect that you know that. And so let's compare those two real quick here. 4 times 1, whoops, there we go, is 4. 3 times 1 is 3. Obviously the 4 is bigger, so 1/3 is bigger. So again, back in the form I gave you, 0.25 and 1/3. That puts these in order. Need to replay that? Feel free to do so. Ask questions all you want. So go ahead and pause, head into Class Kick. Your turn to do one. You get stuck, please do ask. I'm going to be watching, and I'll help all you need. All right, so here's the answer to this one. And as you can see, I put it down here already for you. So if you got it right, you can move on. If you didn't and you need me to go through it, please pay attention. Let's do that. All righty, so I want to talk about the negative square root of 5 up here. Right? I'm going to talk about that one first. So if we think about the regular square root of 5, that is between the square root of 4 and the square root of 9, which is the numbers 2 and 3. So this is going to be negative 2 point something, right? Negative 2 point something. I don't know why I put a 3 there. Hang on. Oh, because I was looking over at the 2.3 over there. All right, negative 2 point something. All right. So I got to think up here. What is the most negative number, right? Well, that negative square root of 5 is definitely the most negative because this one definitely more positive, right? Or it's bigger because it's closer to 0. Let's say that, heading to the right on the number line. So negative square root of 5 comes first, and then negative 0.23 is next. So we took care of the negatives. Sometimes those are the easiest to deal with. So the others, I got to think, well, what do I want to do here? I could make these all decimals. That might be the easiest thing. So I've got, let me switch colors here real quick. I have 2.3, right? We have 0.6 repeating. Then we have 8/5, and again, 8/5, what is that as a decimal? You can straight up divide that out, right? So 8 divided by 5, and it gives you 1.6. So now we can see those three here. And which one is the next in size? So obviously we're going positives here. That smallest of those is the 0.6 repeating. After that, we have, 1.6 or 8/5. And finally, the biggest is obviously 2.3 out of those. And there you go, in that order. Lots of tricks we can use, like decimals, fraction comparisons, means extremes theorem. Lots of tricks we can use with this. Go ahead and keep watching for another example from me. All right, so let's put some more in order, shall we? Let's think about that. I'd like to talk about the square roots first. You guys have kind of figured that out, maybe. Square root of 1 is between the two perfect squares. I'm sorry, square root of 3 is between the two perfect squares, the square root of 1 and the square root of 4. So it's between 1 and 2. So this is going to be 1 point something. Okay, so that might be useful information in a minute. Let's start, though, with the negatives. Lots of negatives on this one. If I'm going to compare these three negatives, well, let's turn this one into a decimal. So 3, right, 3 divided by 5 is 0.6. So this is negative 0.6. So I want to compare these. And by the way, comparing these two, negative 0.6, this is negative 0.60. Right, so it's a little more negative, which makes it smaller, I guess, if you think about it that way. So the most negative here is negative 3.5. And then again, negative 3/5 or negative 0.6. And again, I do want to see that written in the form I give you. Then your negative 0.45. Okay, so that takes care of all my negatives to start with. Now then, I'm looking at 5/2 and the square root of 3. Well, 5/2 is actually the number, what, 2.5, right? So if you divide it out, 5/2 is 2.5. So I know that 1 point something is definitely smaller than that. So square root of 3 comes next, and then again 5/2 to finish it off. So in order. Lots of tricks we have up our sleeves to do that. Once again, pause, head into class kick. Your turn. Alrighty. So, more fun ones to figure out. Let's start with the square root of 20. That is between what two perfect squares? Well, the square root of 16, which is the number 4, and the square root of, you got to think to yourself, what's the next perfect square after that? Give you a second. Yep, square root of 25, which is the number 5. So this is going to be 4 point something, right? 4 point something. This, by the way, think about it, is the number 9. No, it's not. What the heck? I was thinking 3 squared. It's 2 cubed. 2 times 2 times 2 is actually the number, I keep trying to get a marker here, the number 8. There we go. It's actually the number 8. 2 times 2 times 2, it's the number 8. For Pete's sake. Alrighty, so no negatives here to deal with, so let's start with the smallest number. If you want to think about decimals, I know some of you like that. This is actually the number 1.5, right? So we got to think, what is the smallest here? Well, clearly it's going to be 0.2 repeating. So 0.2 repeating is the smallest. Next up, looking at these, I have 8, 10, 4 point something, 1.5. Hey, there we go. So again, give it back to me in the original format, 3/2. Cross that one off. Next up then, well, I've got 8, I've got 10, 4 point something left. So obviously 4 point something, or again, square root of 20 is up next. And then we're going to finish out with 8 or 2 cubed, again, original format, and 10. So there we go, in order, smallest to biggest. Go ahead and continue watching for another example from me. Okay, going to take it to the next step this time. Not just putting them in order, but putting them on a number line. And again, I like to put them in order first. I mean, maybe you don't however you want to do that. We know how big my number line has to be. So if I think about my numbers here, I have negative 0.5, that's the negative 1/2. Square root of 16 is the number 4. There we go. Negative 5, and again, square root of 2. Well, that's going to be between the square root of 1 and the square root of 4, so it's going to be 1 point something. So you got to figure out what that one, you don't have to have an exact answer here, but 1 point something. All right. So it looks like my smallest number up here is negative 5, and my biggest number is going to be square root of 2. No, that's not right. My biggest number is going to be the number 4, or the square root of 16. All right, so I'm going to have to go from negative 5 to 4 on my number line. So I'm going to make my number line. We'll start with negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you like to put a 5 for symmetry, go for it. It doesn't matter to me. 0 doesn't have to be the center of your number line. I'm more concerned about the numbers you have to place on there. All right, I'm going to switch colors here so I can place them on there. So let's just go from left to right. Negative 0.5 is clearly between 0 and negative 1. So we're going to go ahead and put that. And again, I want it in the original format I gave you. So negative 1/2 goes there. Square root of 16, or the number 4, right? Again, I want it in the original format I gave you. Square root of 16. Negative 5, that's the way I gave it to you. There we go. And again, 1 point something, so square root of 2. It's not dead in the middle. Probably a little bit closer to the 1 in this case. So square root of 2 goes there. Again, one piece at a time. Figure out how big your number line has to be, and then go in and place them on there. Go ahead and pause, head into class kick. Your turn. Alrighty. Before we begin here, something real quick. I want to make sure that you understand the square root of 1/4 is technically the same as the square root of 1 over the square root of 4, or the number 1 over the number 2. It's 1/2. This is actually the number 1/2. Let's see, negative 0.2, well, that's between 0 and negative 1. 0.95 is almost to 1. And the square root of, or the negative square root of 0.25, well, you got to think, 0.25, what numbers, right? What number times itself gives you 0.25? Well, that's 0.5. So this is technically negative 0.5 right here. Negative 0.5 if you prefer. Okay, you don't believe me? Grab a calculator and check it. But again, 0.5 times 0.5 is 0.25. So, all right, so this is going to be a little number line. It only goes from like not even clear to negative 1 and not even all the way to 1. So let me switch colors here again, just because. So we'll go from negative 1 to 0 to 1. So let's do the easy ones, like 1/2, right? So that's halfway between 0 and 1. And again, the original format I gave it to you was the square root of 1/4. Negative 0.5, that's another easy one to do. So that's the negative square root of 0.25. This one's kind of a fun one. 0.95 is all the way almost to 1, right? So 0.95. And then negative 0.2, that's going to be not clear to the, it's not going to be quite to the 0.5, so in here-ish, right? So negative 0.2. And there you go. That's the whole lot of them. One at a time. Take your time. Don't get overwhelmed. All right, I go and continue for another example for me. Time for a little comparison. Okay, what's bigger, what's smaller? Going to have to do this on my test as well in the quiz. So, got to think to myself, square root of 10. What two perfect squares is that between? Well, that's between the square root of 9. Again, if you don't know that, look at that number line. I gave you the perfect squares on there, the thing at the very beginning today. Square root of 9, right, which is the number 3. And the square root of 16, which is the number 4. 10 falls between. In fact, it's closer, right, to the square root of 9, so it's going to be like 3.1-ish maybe, right? And if you're not sure, you know, you can put it in the calculator. Put 10 square root, and it's 3.1622, blah, 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 goes on forever. No matter what, the 3 point anything is smaller than the number, whoops, I don't know what the heck that was, is smaller than the number 5 every single day, no matter what. So 3 point something is definitely smaller than the number 5. Go ahead and pause, head into class kick, your turn. Alrighty, so comparing these two, square root of 36 and the number 7. Well, the square root of 36 is the number 6. 6 is smaller than 7 every day, all day. That's it.